Hey guys, tonight we're heading back, way back to the land of golden gods, painted tombs and scorching sunrises that could fry a fig before breakfast. But this isn't a tale of pharaohs on golden thrones or Cleopatra's eyeliner routine. No, tonight, you're not royalty, you're just you. A regular person trying to survive a single day in ancient Egypt. No spells, no hieroglyphs, no air conditioning. And trust me, it's going to be a rough one. The good news? You've woken up beside the Nile. The bad news? You're wrapped in stiff linen that smells faintly of goats, and your bed is a straw mat on a cracked mud brick floor still warm from yesterday's sun. Outside, the morning begins with the sound of a donkey braying and someone loudly coughing phlegm into a clay pot. It's the soundtrack of survival, and your day hasn't even started yet. But before we tumble into temple dust and sweat-soaked tunics, take just a moment. If this kind of sleepy historical unravelling makes your eyelids a little heavier in the best way, go ahead and like this story, and maybe even subscribe. Only if you truly enjoy these little time travels we take together. Leave a comment too. Let me know where you're listening from and what time your world is drifting into night. I always find it fascinating how far this small sleepy community reaches. Now, turn the lights down, maybe let a soft fan hum in the background and nestle into your pillow. We're going to the Nile, but don't pack much. The desert doesn't wait. You blink against the dusty dawn light filtering through a woven reed curtain. The air inside your home is already warming up. No glass windows, no doors to keep the heat out, just archways and sun-baked walls. You stretch your limbs, stiff from sleeping on that itchy mat, and every joint in your back whispers complaints. You're not even 30 yet, but your spine seems convinced it's already seen a lifetime. Your sandals lie beside the door, leather, curled and cracked. You slip them on and hope they survive one more day, because barefoot on a hot clay road is not an experience worth repeating. Especially not with the little beetles that like to scurry out just after sunrise. Stepping outside, you're hit by a familiar wall of smells. Fresh manure, river water, sweat, and whatever the neighbours were fermenting in that clay jar they forgot about 3 weeks ago. You nod at an old woman dragging a basket of laundry toward the river, her face carved with more lines than the inscriptions on a temple wall. She doesn't greet you, there's no time for small talk, the sun waits for no one, and neither does the work. You've got to be down at the granary before the overseer starts shouting again. And just like that, your day in ancient Egypt begins. Your linen tunic clings to your damp skin before you've even reached the end of the street. You pass goats munching on papyrus scraps, children already barefoot and dusty, and the hum of prayers rising from a nearby temple courtyard. The gods might be watching, but so are the officials, and you're late again. By the time you reach the granary, the sun has already started flexing its muscles in the sky, casting long gold-orange streaks across the ground. It's not yet mid-morning, but the heat is settling in like a lazy cat, curling around every building, every stone, every poor soul unlucky enough to work outdoors. You squint at the glare bouncing off the whitewashed walls, the kind that makes your eyes water and your head throb if you stare too long. Sweat clings to your neck, then trickles between your shoulder blades, soaking into the only tunic you own. It's already stiff from yesterday's labour, stained from days before that. You haven't washed it in a week, not because you're lazy, but because clean water isn't something you waste on fabric unless it's a festival day or a burial. And neither of those are happening today, at least not yet. The overseer is already barking. His voice cuts through the morning like a stone blade. He doesn't shout names, just gestures wildly and expects everyone to read his mood by the tilt of his head and the stiffness of his shoulders. You fall in with the rest of the grain haulers, joining the human chain of shoulders, knees and dust. The sacks are heavy, heavier than they have any right to be, and the fibres scratch your arms. You hoist one onto your back, every muscle protesting, and begin the slow shuffle across the courtyard. Each footstep kicks up more dust. It clings to your sweaty skin and sneaks into your nose, your mouth, even behind your ears. Breathing feels like chewing sand. But no one complains. That's a luxury for people with silver rings and shaded balconies. Out here, you keep your head down and hope the morning passes quickly. The grain is stored in tall silos made of sun-dried mud brick, the kind that holds the heat even at night. Climbing the wooden ladder to reach the top is another test of endurance. Your legs ache, your palms slip on the smooth wood, and for a moment you imagine just not climbing, just letting go, falling into the grain pile below and disappearing into the warm, dusty quiet. It wouldn't be the worst way to go. But then someone yells from behind, the ladder creaks under the next worker's weight, and you move, because stopping isn't an option. Not unless you want to feel the whip of that overseer's rope against your calves, or worse, find yourself pulled from the labour roster entirely. And without work, there's no bread. Without bread, there's nothing. When your shift finally ends, it's not because the work is done, it's because the sun is too high, the heat too fierce, and the risk of someone collapsing too real to ignore. You shuffle away with the rest of them, your shoulders throbbing and your lips dry and cracked. There's no lunch break, just a hope that someone at home remembered to soak the lentils or scrape the last bit of fermented fish from the jar. On your way back, you pause at a public basin, just long enough to splash a bit of water on your face. It's warm, slightly green, and smells faintly of old clay pots and algae. But you drink anyway. You've sweated out every drop you had, and your head is beginning to pound. If the gods didn't want you drinking murky water, maybe they should have left a river closer to your door. By the time you get home, the light inside your small house is dim and golden, filtered through the woven reed blinds hanging from the windows. Your mat is waiting for you in the corner, but lying down right now would just make it harder to get back up. So you sit instead, legs stretched out, arms resting on your knees, and stare at the ceiling. It's made of palm wood and reeds, patched in places with bits of fabric and pottery shards to keep the snakes out. You're not sure it's doing a very good job. Somewhere outside, a child laughs. A baby cries. The call of a priest echoes faintly in the distance. But in your house, it's quiet. Your neighbour pokes her head in, a girl barely 16, already missing 2 teeth and carrying a bundle of kindling in one arm. She asks if you're going to the temple later for the offering. You nod without answering. Not because you're especially devout, but because sometimes pretending is easier. If you skip the offering, people talk. And in a village this size, that kind of talk sticks to you like dust on sweat. You say you'll go. Maybe you even mean it. But for now, you rest. The afternoon still stretches out before you, long and unforgiving. And the sun hasn't even begun to set. The sun slinks towards late afternoon, but the heat hasn't noticed. It still presses down like a thick blanket soaked in sand. Every movement feels slower now, as if time itself is slogging through the day with you, barefoot and dusty. You pull yourself from your resting place on the floor, bones creaking like dry reeds in the wind, and step outside. The air hits your face, hotter than before, heavy with the scent of baked earth, sweating clay, and the acrid tang of dung left too long in the sun. Your neighbour's goats are still loitering by the alley, heads drooping, tongues flicking, their narrow shadows stretched thin along the ground. They look just as miserable as you feel. Across the courtyard, someone's pounding laundry against a stone slab, the wet thump, 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 echoing lazily in the heat. A child runs past, squealing in delight, chasing a dry palm frond with all the seriousness of a festival race. His feet kick up little puffs of dust and you cough without meaning to. Your throat is dry again. You think about heading to the well, but the line will be long and the water warm. Still, maybe after the temple, if you can stomach the weight. Your legs ache as you walk, but not the sharp, sudden pain of injury. No, this is the dull, familiar ache of a body worn down by repetition. You know these streets by heart. Every stone, every crack in the walls, every faded smear of ochre paint where someone once tried to make their doorway beautiful. The smell of roasting onions drifts from one of the homes, mixed with fish paste and something else that reminds you of sour beer. A woman is humming nearby, a soft lullaby for a baby hidden behind a curtain of reeds. It's oddly comforting, that song. You don't know the words, but the melody carries something familiar. It settles into the rhythm of your steps as you make your way toward the temple. It isn't far. Nothing is, really. In a town built along the rhythm of the river, everything clusters tightly, homes pressed together, lives overlapping, noises blending into one long conversation of labour and survival. The temple rises modestly above the nearby houses, its plastered walls slightly cleaner than the rest, with faded paint still clinging in places. The columns out front are crooked from years of shifting earth, but the statues remain, staring out, half eroded, their faces unreadable. You pass under the painted lintel, the worn images of lotus flowers and sacred birds barely visible now. Inside, the air is cooler, still touched by incense from an earlier prayer. It smells like dried herbs, sweet smoke and old stone, and for a moment it slows your breath. You kneel on the mat near the back, not close enough to draw attention, but not so far as to seem indifferent. A priest drones softly near the altar, reciting hymns in a rhythm older than memory. He doesn't look up. You let the sounds blur together, a lull of vowels and breath that wraps around your thoughts and dulls the sharper edges of the day. Others kneel nearby, mothers, workers, an old man with missing fingers, a boy in torn linen clutching a papyrus charm. No one speaks. The stillness is its own language. You're not here because you believe the gods are watching. You're here because this is what people do when they're tired and need the silence of a stone room and the weight of tradition to carry the burdens they can't name aloud. When the priest finishes, you don't wait. You rise slowly, brush your knees, and step outside. The light has shifted, softer now, golden and low, as if the sky itself is finally ready to exhale. The wind picks up slightly, carrying a cooler breeze from the river. It smells of wet mud, reeds, and something sweet you can't place. You follow the scent, drawn down the path that leads back toward the water's edge. The river is wide here, slower, glinting like molten bronze in the fading sun. A few boats are tied up nearby, their sails furled, oars resting inside like tired limbs. You sit on a flat stone at the bank, dipping your fingers into the water. It's cooler than you expected. A small mercy. Around you, dragonflies flit in lazy arcs, their wings catching the last of the light. Somewhere upstream, someone laughs. It's a deep, rough laugh, real and unguarded. You smile without meaning to. It's strange how moments like this sneak up on you. Tiny pauses between the heat, the hunger, the ache. Moments when you remember there's more to this life than just surviving it. You stay there until the sun finally dips behind the hills and the sky bruises with twilight. Night is coming, and with it, another kind of quiet. But for now, you sit and watch the river move like time itself, slow and endless. The twilight air deepens around you, and the colour of the sky shifts from soft gold to a hazy violet that feels thick with the end of the day. The river hums low beside you, brushing gently against the banks in a rhythm that feels almost deliberate, like it's whispering a lullaby too ancient for words. The water reflects the last light like a sheet of burnished metal, trembling softly with every breeze and ripple. Your fingertips trail through it absent-mindedly, leaving small waves behind, little distortions that vanish as soon as they appear. It's strangely comforting, this brief illusion of control. You move your hand and the world shifts, if only for a moment. You move it again and it forgets you ever touched it. Behind you, the town has begun to quiet. The shouts of children chasing each other through alleyways have faded. The clatter of clay pots, the scrape of bowls being washed with sand and water, and the rhythm of daily chores all begin to taper off. Lanterns flicker to life here and there, weak orange glows that shimmer like fireflies behind thin cloth windows. You hear a man cough loudly somewhere to your left, followed by a muttered curse and the creak of a door closing. The smells of dinner drift in the air, onions frying in oil, lentils, boiled fish, burnt bread. Your stomach growls, more out of habit than hunger, because there's not much waiting at home. Just a crust of barley loaf and maybe a bit of sour beer, if your brother hasn't already finished it. You're not angry. He works just as hard. And when food is scarce, resentment feels like wasted breath. You rise slowly from the riverbank, brushing dried silt off your palms. Your legs are stiff, your shoulders sour, and your lower back feels like someone replaced your spine with a crooked stick. You walk slower now, not because you want to, but because your body demands it. The path home is familiar, but it feels longer in the dark. The shadows stretch farther, and the warmth you borrowed from the sun has already started to leave your bones. You pass a family sitting on a woven mat outside their home, sharing a meal by the flickering light of a clay lantern. The children chew in silence while the parents speak in hushed tones, voices low and close. You don't hear their words, and it's probably better that way. There's something intimate about soft conversations in the dark, the kind meant only for ears that have earned the trust. As you near your home, you notice the door is open just a crack, not unusual. Doors here aren't about keeping things out, they're about letting air in. Still, it makes you pause. You push it open gently and step inside. The interior is dim, shadows melting into one another, broken only by a dying ember in the hearth, and a faint scent of dry herbs that someone must have scattered earlier to mask the mildew. Your brother is asleep already, curled on his side, one arm draped over his face to block out the fading light. You move quietly, sitting in the corner on your mat, trying not to wake him. Your fingers find the hard crust of bread beside a half-empty jar. You chew slowly, not because you're savouring it, but because the bread is too tough to bite through all at once. It tastes like dust and old oil. Still, it's food. You drink the rest of the beer straight from the jar, ignoring the sourness. It burns a little on the way down, but it eases something in your chest that you didn't realise had tightened. The night deepens. Outside, the wind carries the sound of distant drums, maybe a wedding, maybe just someone trying to keep the jackals away. You lie back on your mat, arms behind your head, staring up at the reed ceiling. The roof creaks softly, shifting with the cooling air. Somewhere in the thatch, a beetle scratches along a beam, and a gecko clicks its tiny bark of warning from the wall. You close your eyes, not yet asleep, but not quite awake either. Your body is still buzzing from the day's heat and labour. Your skin warm in patches, cool in others. You feel the itch of dried sweat along your ribs and the ache in your heels where your sandals rub too tight. Sleep comes slow in ancient Egypt. It doesn't fall on you like a curtain. It creeps in, like the Nile at flood season, seeping into the cracks of your thoughts and pulling you toward its dark, slow current. You think about the next day, the same work, the same heat, the same brittle bread, and yet, for some reason, the idea doesn't scare you. Maybe it's because there's a strange peace in knowing what's ahead, even if it's hard, or maybe it's because out here, under the worn roof of a crumbling home, beside a brother who still breathes slow and steady, you've survived one more day. Morning doesn't arrive with soft light and songbirds. It returns with a slap of hot air and a goat braying far too close to your ear. You wake up groggy, not because you slept badly, but because sleep in this place is always a shallow thing. You drift in and out all night, stirred by the heat, the itch of unseen insects, and the creaking of your own body every time you shift position. Your mat has left its pattern pressed into your skin again, little criss-crossed lines along your side that sting faintly when you sit up. Your tunic is damp and twisted around your waist, and the corner of your mouth tastes of whatever you last ate, bread or beer or maybe both. You reach up and rub the grit from your eyes, then sit for a moment in silence, watching the beam of morning light snake its way across the clay wall. Outside the circumvent, day has already begun without you. Your brother is gone. No note, no sound, no farewell. Just an empty space where he slept and a dent in the mat to prove he'd been there at all. You're not surprised. He's always up before you, chasing work like it might disappear if he doesn't get to it first. Maybe he's at the river, helping a fisherman mend nets. Maybe he's hauling stone. Maybe he's trying to find a job that doesn't involve blisters and sand in your teeth. But you doubt it. Nothing comes easy here. You swing your legs over the side of the mat and press your feet to the floor. It's still cool from the night, and for a brief second it feels good. But then the ache in your knees returns, a dull reminder that yesterday's labour never really leaves your bones. You step outside and squint into the light. The sun is climbing fast, not yet high enough to bake the road, but soon. You hear the sounds of another morning already underway. A woman shouting for her child, the clang of pottery, the rhythmic thud of someone pounding something soft into something flat. Flatbread, most likely. The smell of it reaches you, smoky and sharp, mixed with dust and the scent of dampy earth from water spilled too carelessly. Your stomach grumbles. There won't be much to eat today either, just enough to keep you standing, enough to keep you moving. The gods never promise comfort, only survival, and even that feels negotiable some days. Today's work isn't at the granary. Instead, you've been pulled to the edge of the town where new bricks are being made for repairs on the outer wall. The kind of job that breaks your back in slow, deliberate ways. You walk slowly, your feet dragging a little, sandals kicking up dust that sticks to your ankles. When you reach the work site, you see it at once. The mud pit, half dried from yesterday's sun, the baskets of chopped straw, the rows of moulds, and the older man with a scorched hat and a whip-thin frame who nods at you without smiling. You nod back and step into the routine without needing instructions. Mix the mud, add the straw, pack it into the mould, smooth the top, carry the drying bricks to the sun-exposed platforms and start again. It's work you've done before, the kind that leaves your hands cracked and brown, your nails filled with silt and your shoulders pulsing by midday. As the sun rises higher, the mud begins to stiffen and resist. It doesn't like to be worked in the heat. You understand it. Neither do you. The labour is quiet, only the sound of breath and slosh and the occasional grunt when someone lifts too much too quickly. Around you, other workers move like machines, eyes half closed, mouths drawn in tight lines. No one talks, there's no need. The rhythm of the task is its own language. You fall into it easily, letting the hours blur into one long smear of motion and discomfort. Time bends here, losing its edges, folding into itself until the only thing that matters is how many bricks you've made and how many more remain. By the time a break is called, your arms are trembling and your feet feel swollen inside your sandals. You sit in the narrow shadow of the wall, wiping your forehead with the back of your wrist. The sweat burns your eyes. A boy passes by with a jar of water, and you trade him a chipped bead you found days ago for a few mouthfuls. The water is warm, but you drink like it's sacred. It trickles down your throat and settles in your stomach like a blessing. You close your eyes for a moment and rest your head against the wall. The bricks behind you are still warm from the day before. You wonder if one of them came from your hands, from some other time when you were younger, or stronger, or maybe just less tired. Then someone calls your name and the moment breaks. It's time to go back. So you rise again, body aching, breath shallow, and you walk back toward the pit. The mud is waiting. The sun is higher now, and the day still has miles to go. The heat by midday no longer just hovers around you. It presses down like a physical weight, thick and unrelenting, seeping into your bones and clinging to your breath. Your back is drenched again, the linen tunic plastered to your skin, streaked with lines of drying sweat and wet mud. Your fingers, caked with clay, crack when you flex them. The joints feel swollen and stiff like they've aged years in a matter of hours. But there's no point in complaining. Complaints don't move the sun or soften the ground. You just keep shaping the bricks, one after another. You slap the wet mixture into the mould, smooth the surface with your palm, and slide the form free to reveal a new block, identical to the last. You stack them carefully, side by side in the sun, then return to the pit to do it again. The smell is sour now, thick with the odour of wet earth cooking under the midday blaze. The straw adds a dry, papery edge to it, and every breath feels like you're inhaling dust and rot. Flies gather around the edges of the worksite, drawn to the sweat and the slop and the promise of anything dying slowly in the heat. You wave them away without looking, already too used to their presence. They land on your arms, your face, your neck. You slap at them without breaking rhythm. The foreman hasn't spoken since morning, but his gaze sweeps over the group with the slow precision of a hawk waiting for someone to falter. You don't give him the satisfaction. Your hands keep moving. When the sun finally begins to slide downward again, casting longer shadows and softening the glare just a little, there's no announcement that the workday is ending, just a shift in the workers. One by one they begin to slow. Someone straightens up and stretches their back with a groan. Another leans on their shovel, breathing hard, staring off at nothing. Eventually the foreman mutters something to no one in particular, and the labour stops. You wipe your hands on your tunic, though it does nothing. To clean them, your palms are stained with brown lines that won't wash off easily. Not tonight, maybe not ever. Some things just stay with you. You walk home in silence. The road is quieter now. Even the animals seem subdued. A pair of children crouch in the dirt near the edge of the alley, drawing something into the ground with sticks. You can't tell what it is. A game maybe, or some version of a story they don't yet have words for. Their voices rise and fall in whispers and giggles, untouched by the fatigue of labour. You envy them just a little, but only a little. Their turn will come soon enough. When you reach your doorway, your legs feel like hollow reeds, brittle and tired. The inside of your home is stuffy and warm, but the walls hold a little of the coolness from the night before. You sit down on your mat and lean back against the wall, letting your body settle into the familiar ache. There's a small loaf of bread left, hard and dry, and a dish with something that might have been lentils at some point but now resembles more of a paste. You eat it slowly, without much thought, swallowing each bite like medicine. Your stomach protests, then settles. Hunger is like pain here. It comes and goes. You learn to live with it. Your brother returns not long after, covered in the grime of his own labour. He nods at you, doesn't speak. There's no need. You share the silence like a bowl of food, passing it back and forth between you. He eats his portion without ceremony, and then he lies back, one arm draped over his forehead. The lantern sputters weakly in the corner, its light flickering across the wall in uneven patterns. You watch it for a while, not thinking, just letting your mind drift, like the river after flood season. Slow, winding, carrying bits of the day along in pieces. Outside, the town has gone soft again. Quiet voices murmur through the walls. The occasional bray of a donkey or the clink of pottery is all that reminds you the world is still turning. You lie back on your mat, arms crossed over your chest, and close your eyes. The soreness in your body hums like a background song, low and steady. You know it will be there tomorrow too, just like the mud, just like the sun. Sleep doesn't come easily, not when your muscles are twitching and the air is too thick to breathe comfortably. But eventually your thoughts begin to loosen their grip. You think of the bricks again, of the smooth feel of them leaving the mould, the satisfying shape they take when you get it just right. You think of the silence in the temple and the way the priest's voice echoed off the stone. You think of the river and how even in the heat it always seems cool. And then, like clay drying in the shade, your mind settles. The weight of the day melts into the rhythm of your breath, and slowly, without ceremony, you begin to drift. The night passes in fragments, scattered between shallow dreams and the half-conscious tossing of limbs too sore to find rest. You wake once to the sound of something scurrying across the roof, and again to the low groan of your brother shifting beside you. The air is thick, as if the walls have soaked up the heat of the day and are slowly bleeding it back into your skin. You tug the edge of your linen wrap tighter around your chest, not for warmth, but to block the thin draught that carries the smell of smoke and something faintly spoiled from the street outside. Somewhere in the dark a dog barks once, then goes quiet. You close your eyes again and drift, not into sleep, but into that limbo where time doesn't move and thoughts unravel like thread. When true morning comes, it doesn't arrive with ceremony. There is no rooster call or blaring horn, just the gradual brightening of the world, the soft stirring of dust, the distant thud of someone dropping a heavy pot onto stone. You open your eyes to the pale ceiling and the sound of a ladle tapping against clay. Your brother is crouched near the corner, pouring a bit of water into a cracked bowl, dousing yesterday's coals in hopes of coaxing them back to life. You sit up slowly, your body creaking like a cartwheel, every muscle tight and reluctant. He glances your way, offers a quiet grunt of acknowledgement, then returns to his task. Words feel unnecessary this early. The rituals of morning speak for themselves. You rub your face, dragging fingers across sunburned cheeks and beneath dry, aching eyes. The skin near your temples itches, likely from the fine dust that never fully washes away. You drink from the same jar as the night before, swishing the stale water in your mouth to loosen the dryness in your throat before swallowing. It's not refreshing, but it does enough to wake your senses. There's a chunk of bread on the floor between you and your brother, and you break it in half, the crust resisting your fingers. It tastes of old grain and wook, and you chew it slowly, knowing this may be all you get until dusk. By mid-morning, the job has shifted again. You're not sent back to the mud pit, at least not yet. Today it's temple work. Not the inside where the walls breathe incense and the priests walk in measured steps, but the outside perimeter, where paint is fading and stone is cracking from years of neglect. You're handed a bundle of tools, dull blades, chisels, brushes too soft to be useful, and pointed toward a section of wall shaded just enough to make you grateful. The work is tedious, flaking away at worn plaster, brushing off old grime, mixing a thin wash of paint to be applied layer by layer, only to watch it vanish under the harsh sun hours later. You work beside two others, both older than you, both silent except for the occasional grunt of frustration when a tool slips or a brick crumbles beneath their hands. The day crawls. Every task repeats itself like a chant you don't quite believe in. Strip the old paint, dust the cracks, wet the brush, spread the wash, watch it disappear. The wall is ancient, older than anyone living, and yet here you are, scrubbing it with your bare hands as if you could convince time to run backward. One of the men beside you mutters a prayer now and then, something soft and mumbled under his breath, not to the priests inside, but to the stones themselves, as if they might remember who built them. You don't interrupt. You understand that kind of reverence. It's not about faith, it's about fatigue, about needing to believe the things we touch might outlive the pain it took to shape them. By the time the sun begins to lean westward, your hands are sore from holding tools too tightly, and your knees ache from crouching on uneven stone. You stretch your back slowly, wincing at the crack that echoes up your spine. The temple wall still looks tired, still weathered, but it gleams faintly in places now, little patches of colour shining through the grime like bruises beginning to heal. You feel a strange flicker of pride, not loud or boastful, but quiet and buried deep, the kind that comes from knowing you've given something your effort, even if the results barely show. The priest overseeing the site calls a halt to the work. He doesn't thank you, just waves his hand and turns away, robes trailing in the dust. You gather your tools, brushing them off with your tunic, and follow the others toward the outer gate. Your body is tired again, but it's a different kind of tired than the mud work. This is a tiredness that lingers more in the shoulders, less in the feet. Your hands are stained faintly red from the pigments. It makes you look like you've bled, but there's no pain, just colour. As you walk home, the wind picks up a little, carrying the scent of fresh-cut reeds and distant oil fires. A few palm trees rustle gently in the breeze, and somewhere nearby someone is singing. You don't recognise the tune, but the voice is soft and low, almost like a lullaby for the earth. You don't stop to listen. You keep walking, letting the song follow you into the evening light. The sun sinks lower behind the rooftops as you step back into the alley near your home, its final rays slicing between the buildings like golden blades before softening into a dusty glow. The air is cool just enough to breathe without effort, though the walls still radiate warmth from the day. Your feet drag slightly as you walk, not because you're lazy, but because every muscle in your legs feels like it has tightened around your bones. Your sandals slap the dirt softly with each step, soles worn thin from days just like this one. When you reach your doorway, you pause for a moment, pressing your palm to the warm plaster. You do this sometimes without thinking. It grounds you, reminds you that even when your mind drifts with exhaustion, your body is still here, still standing. Inside, the home is dim and quiet. Your brother is not yet back, or maybe he has gone out again. His mat is undisturbed, and the air still holds that faint trace of old bread and dried herbs. You walk to the small corner where your clay jars and cooking stones are kept. There's not much left. A few wilted leeks, a thumb-sized portion of dried fish wrapped in a bit of cloth. You consider cooking, but the thought of sitting by a fire, even a small one, feels unbearable. So instead, you chew on a few stalks raw and sit near the doorway, letting your legs stretch into the alley's edge. The light out here is softer now, filled with that particular stillness that comes only when the village pauses between hunger and sleep. People pass by in small clusters. A girl balances a bundle of papyrus on her head, arms swinging confidently at her sides. A boy chases a chicken, barefoot and laughing, the bird clucking indignantly as it zigzags through puddles. An old man limps along the wall, using a staff more out of ritual than support. You nod to him. He does not nod back, but that's not unusual. Some people speak with gestures, some speak only with silence. The day is winding down, but the village still hums, not loudly, just enough to remind you that life continues in every corner, even in weariness. After some time, your brother returns, brushing past the doorway with dust in his hair and a look that says he's spent. You both sit without speaking side by side in the low evening light. He unwraps a small bundle of dates he must have traded for, handing you one before popping another into his mouth. The sweetness surprises you. Your tongue forgets what it's like to taste something not grown from struggle. You chew slowly, letting the syrupy flesh stick to your teeth and soften the dryness in your mouth. It's a moment, brief and quiet, but it rests between you like an offering. He tells you about a man at the river who collapsed midday, fell face first into the nets and didn't move for a long time. They carried him home, but no one knows if he'll wake. You listen, not because you want to, but because you need to. These stories are the heartbeat of the village. Little warnings wrapped in other people's names. Reminders of how close the edge always is. Neither of you says it, but the message hangs in the air. Be careful. Don't push too far, drink more, rest if you can, not that any of that is truly possible. But saying it might make it feel closer to truth. As the last traces of light disappear and the stars begin to pierce the sky with their tiny, eternal sharpness, your brother rises and walks back inside. You stay a little longer, watching the night unfold. The moon tonight is a thin crescent, like a scratch in the sky. Somewhere nearby, someone plays a flute, soft and unhurried, the notes rising like smoke from a temple offering. The sound curls around the corners of the buildings, winding through the alleys until it finds your doorway. It feels ancient and familiar, like something that has always existed just beyond reach. You close your eyes and let it wash over you. Eventually, you return inside. The heat has finally begun to let go of the walls. You lie back on your mat, bones humming with fatigue, and pull the thin cloth over your chest. Your brother's breathing steadies beside you, a rhythm you've known since you were both children, sharing this same space, this same patch of floor, this same world. The night insects begin their quiet chorus. The roof creaks gently above your head. You stare at the ceiling until your eyes blur, until the flickering shadows melt into sleep. And somewhere, just before you drift away, you think again about that temple wall, the way the colours came back just a little under your hands. The way the dust fell like sand from time's own pockets. You wonder if someday someone will see that wall and not know your name, but still see the mark of your labour, and feel for a second what it meant to exist here. The morning greets you without warmth, not in the sense of coldness, there's no such thing in this part of Egypt, but in that way life sometimes greets the tired. The light presses into your eyes before you open them, a soft intrusion that nudges you from sleep like an impatient hand on your shoulder. You blink slowly, not because you've slept enough, but because the world has summoned you back whether you're ready or not. Your body protests before your mind even has a chance to remember where you are. Your neck is sore from sleeping at the wrong angle, and your ribs ache from lying too long on one side. You roll onto your back and stare at the cracked ceiling, where a thin line of light slips through a reed seam and cuts across the air above your face like a quiet whisper from the sun. Your brother is gone again, though you didn't hear him leave. You sit up and stretch your arms until your joints pop, then lower them slowly, feeling each muscle pull like wet rope. Today has not made itself known to you yet. There is no appointed labour, no overseer's shout echoing in your ears, no predetermined location pulling your feet. It's a rare thing, a day like this. Not a true day of rest, you can't afford such a luxury, but one where you must find your own task or risk being seen as idle. And idleness is not a neutral state here. It invites judgment, suspicion, sometimes even punishment if the wrong official catches your gaze too long without a basket or tool in your hands. So you move, not quickly. There is no rush in your step, but there is purpose. You wash your face from a shared jar that holds more dust than water now, and rub your arms with a cloth until some of the caked dirt lifts free. You chew a bit of dried fig someone left in a pouch on the floor, and then you step into the alley, where the morning has already claimed the air with its sharp, dry scent. The street hums with quiet activity. A potter crouches near his kiln, fanning it to life with slow, practiced movements. A woman balances a jar on her hip and argues with a child too stubborn to come inside. You nod to no one, in particular, and walk toward the river, drawn by instinct more than need. The Nile lies ahead like a sleeping creature, wide and slow, its surface broken only by reeds and passing insects. A few fishermen are already working, their boats slicing narrow wakes across the still water. You squat near the edge, pressing your fingers into the mud just beyond the shore. It's cool and slick, a rare comfort. A boy nearby is collecting snail shells, placing them carefully into a clay bowl, whispering something to himself each time he picks one up. You watch for a moment, then look away. You don't want to interrupt his ritual, whatever it may be. These small acts of meaning are important, even if no one else understands them. After a while you rise and decide to head toward the edge of the town where some of the date palms have begun to shed fruit early. You heard yesterday that a few trees had dropped more than usual, and sometimes if you're quick and lucky, you can gather enough to trade for a bit of oil or cloth. The walk is longer than you remember. The sun climbs higher with every step, and by the time you reach the grove, your back is damp again, your breath shallow. You're not alone. Several others have had the same idea. You nod at a man you've seen at the granary once or twice. He doesn't smile, just returns the nod and continues collecting fallen dates, brushing them off with his hands before placing them into a sack. You search beneath the leaves and between tree roots, careful where you step. Scorpions like to rest in shaded soil, and one mistake could mean days of swelling and pain. You find a few small, firm dates, nothing ripe enough to celebrate, but enough to fill your pouch and justify the walk. The act of gathering them is oddly soothing. Repetitive, mindless. The kind of work that keeps your hands busy while your thoughts drift elsewhere. You think of the wall again, of the boy collecting shells, of your brother, wherever he is, bent beneath some weight of his own. By midday your legs ache again, and the sun has returned to its habit of weighing down your every move. You sit beneath a tree, leaning against the thick trunk, chewing one of the dates slowly. Its sweetness is subtle, edged with that faint bitterness that always lingers at the skin. You think about what to do next. You could try your luck at the river market, trade the fruit for something useful. You could return to the temple and ask if they need another hand at the wall. Or maybe, just maybe, you could do nothing for a while longer. You let your head rest against the bark, eyes half-lidded, heart beating slow and steady. Around you, the breeze stirs the branches, and in that moment, the world feels just a little softer. Even here, even now. The hum of insects becomes a lullaby as you sit there beneath the date palm, head leaning against the rough bark, the heat pressing gently at your temples like a warm hand. You allow yourself to rest, not sleep exactly, but that loose, drifting quiet that carries your thoughts to the edge of dreams. The kind of rest you can only afford in moments like these, when no one is calling your name, when no tools need lifting, when no foreman's eyes are watching from the edge of the square. A dragonfly buzzes past your ear, and you lift your hand lazily, not to swat it away, but to feel its wind as it passes. It flits off toward the water, shimmering in and out of sight like something half imagined. Eventually, the pressure in your back nudges you to move. Sitting too long is its own kind of punishment, and the sun is shifting again, sliding further toward the western hills. You rise slowly, brushing the dust and palm fibers from your tunic, and tighten the pouch of dates at your waist. It's not much, just enough to be worth something to someone who's hungrier than you. You begin the walk back, retracing your steps past the scrub-lined path, past the muddy footprints left by others who came earlier in the day. The air feels different now, softer somehow, and though the sun still burns, it no longer feels like a threat, just a tired companion nearing the end of its shift. The streets are quieter as you re-enter the village. Most people have taken refuge in shaded corners or behind cloth doors, waiting for the worst of the heat to pass before stirring again. You head toward the market by the river, weaving through narrow alleys where stone and plaster homes lean toward each other, like old friends sharing secrets. Children dart out of the way as you pass, their laughter echoing behind them. A woman rinses vegetables in a shallow bowl, humming under her breath, her song familiar but wordless, something passed down through mouths and memories rather than written script. You nod in greeting. She nods back without breaking rhythm. At the riverbank, a few vendors linger beneath makeshift awnings, their goods laid out on reed mats or in wide clay dishes. You walk slowly between them, eyes scanning for someone who might want your dates. A thin man with skin like dried leather, and a gap between his front teeth waves you over. He has oil, a small jar of it, probably pressed from sesame or castor beans. He eyes your pouch, then your face, then your pouch again. No words are exchanged at first, just the silent weighing of value, the mental math of hunger and need. You hold out the pouch. He lifts the jar. You both nod. The trade is made. You carry the oil carefully, wrapped in a bit of cloth and cradled close to your side as you begin the slow walk home. The jar is small, but the oil is precious. Not just for cooking, but for wounds, for sore skin, even for lighting a lamp when the moon fails you. It's worth more than the effort it took to find those dates, and yet the exchange feels fair. Fairness here isn't about counting coins or weighing goods. It's about need meeting need. You had something, he needed it, he had something. Now you have it, and somehow life keeps going. Your home is quiet again when you arrive. The light inside has faded into a soft gold, shadows stretching across the walls like long, patient arms. Your brother returns not long after, his face streaked with dried sweat and something darker near his elbow that might be blood or maybe just old resin from a workshop. He sees the jar and raises an eyebrow. You shrug, no story worth telling, just a trade. He doesn't press for more. Instead, he sets down a wrapped parcel that smells like fish and fermented grain. Dinner in one form or another. As the two of you settle into the rhythm of the evening, there is no ceremony, no ritual. Just the sharing of food, the passing of the jar, the exchange of quiet. The sky outside deepens to indigo. Stars begin to prick the edges of the horizon, and in the stillness between one breath and the next, you feel it again, that strange, unspoken thing that holds this world together. Not faith, not duty, just the gentle, enduring effort of those who survive, who rise again, who return each evening to the same walls, the same mat, the same sky, and find somehow the will to keep going. The night settles slowly, draping its weight across the village like a thick blanket of silence. The oil from the jar you traded earlier now burns gently in a small clay lamp, casting a low, flickering glow across the walls of your home. It's not much light, just enough to see your brother's silhouette across the room, his head bowed over the piece of cloth he's stitching by hand. You can hear the thread pulling through the fabric, the scratch of the needle against old fibres. It's a sound you've grown used to, like the wind rustling reeds or the shifting of your own breath in the quiet. You lean against the wall, your stomach content for the first time in days, not full, not by any means, but not gnawing either. It's a temporary reprieve, one you let settle into your bones while the stillness allows it. Outside, the village has fallen into the rhythm of sleep. The last footsteps have faded from the street. Voices are tucked behind doors, murmuring in their final conversations of the day, or silenced entirely, surrendered to dreams. The air smells of earth and smoke, with a trace of fish oil and the damp scent that always rises from the river at night. You know the routine well now, the way the heat clings, even as the stars bloom above, the way your skin cools slowly, only slightly, under the thin cloth you wrap around yourself. Your eyes are heavy, but not yet ready to close. There's a kind of comfort in the stillness, in the not having to move, not having to answer, just being. You shift on the mat and glance up through the open window where a sliver of moonlight cuts across the far corner of the room. It catches on the edge of a jar, turning its surface silver for a moment before the light shifts, and it becomes just clay again. That happens often, you think. Things look precious when touched by the right light, only to fade back into their ordinary shape when the brightness leaves. You wonder if it's the same with people. If, for brief moments, someone can shine brighter than they are, seem more than what they've been ground down to, then the light changes, and they're just themselves again, patched tunic, sore feet and all. Your brother finishes his stitching and sets the cloth aside. It's an old sash, barely holding together, but worth fixing. He doesn't speak as he lies back, arms crossed beneath his head, eyes turned toward the ceiling. You don't speak either. Words aren't needed. Not every night. You both know how today went. The story of it is written in the weight of your bodies and the way you share what little you have without question. The quiet between you is not a gap. It's a shared space, something built over time and hard days. When sleep finally comes, it comes slowly, like always. Your body gives in before your mind does, muscles melting into the mat, eyes fluttering closed only after long minutes of watching the ceiling shift in and out of the lamp's light. Your thoughts drift to the river again, to the feel of the mud under your fingers, the way the date palms swayed gently overhead this afternoon. You remember the boy with the snail shells, the priest at the temple, the wall still faded but waiting. You wonder if it's been touched again, if the colours you exposed are still visible, or if the dust has returned to claim them. You wonder if any of it matters, if the work you do, the hours you spend shaping clay or brushing stone, leaves anything behind worth remembering. These aren't thoughts that hurt. They're soft, slow things, like threads you tug at while drifting between wakefulness and sleep. You don't need answers, just the quiet of asking is enough. The moonlight shifts again. The oil lamp flickers once, then steadies. Your breath slows, matching the hush of the night outside, and then, like a boat slipping silently into the water, you sink into sleep. The next morning arrives with no ceremony, only the gradual brightness creeping through the spaces between the reeds and a warmth that rises faster than you expect. You wake before the full heat sets in, stirred by the sound of birds chattering just outside your window, their small wings beating in bursts of movement against the roof. Your body aches in familiar ways, and as you stretch, you feel the stiffness along your spine and in your calves, as though your muscles have been wound tight overnight. You roll to one side and sit up slowly, rubbing the sleep from your eyes, adjusting to the blur of light that fills the small room. The oil lamp has burned itself out, leaving a thin ribbon of soot on the wall behind it. Your brother still sleeps, one arm slung across his face, his breath slow and even. You watch him for a moment before rising. Let him rest. He's earned it just as much as you have. You splash water on your face from the clay jar in the corner and run your hands through your hair, though the effort does little more than shift the dust around. Still, it's enough to make you feel like you've begun. You chew on a leftover piece of bread, hard around the edges but still edible, and tuck what's left into a fold of cloth before slipping out into the alley. The morning air is still cool enough to breathe comfortably, though the promise of heat is already settling into the earth. A soft haze rises from the rooftops, blurring the edges of the buildings and painting the horizon in shades of sand and gold. Today you decide to return to the temple, not because anyone sent for you, but because the rhythm of smoothing walls and brushing faded pigment offers a kind of peace that's become strangely welcome. The walk there is quiet. The streets are still shaking off the slowness of sleep, the village humming gently to life. You pass the potter's yard where smoke curls from the kiln in thin spirals, and the scent of wet clay carries through the morning air. A woman is sweeping her threshold, moving slowly, her broom casting neat lines through the dust. She looks up as you pass, her expression unreadable, then lowers her gaze again to her work. The temple sits as it always does, half shadowed by the rising sun, stones cool and damp with morning. You step into its outer corridor and breathe in the faint scent of incense, barely lingering from yesterday's offerings. The air inside is still, thick with history and smoke, and the flickering light that filters through narrow slits in the wall turns the dust into a shifting golden mist. A priest nods as you enter, recognizing you not by name, but by the dirt under your fingernails and the steady gait of someone who comes to do their part without question. You return to your section of wall, where the colours you uncovered last week have dulled slightly beneath a thin veil of new dust. With practised ease, you gather your tools and begin again. Brush away the film, wet the surface, press pigment into grooves barely visible to the untrained eye. The work is slow, deliberate, and strangely intimate. You find yourself thinking less, your thoughts retreating behind the rhythm of motion, letting your hands speak the language of effort. The stone beneath your fingers is cool and rough, and each stroke of the brush feels like a small act of resurrection, coaxing the past to breathe again through shape and hue. Hours pass unnoticed. Others come and go. A boy brings fresh water. A woman replaces a basket of paint cloths. The priest chants quietly in the inner sanctum, his voice rising and falling like the tide. You work until your back protests, until your hands begin to cramp, until the light from the slits shifts to mark midday. Only then do you step back and look at what you've done. It isn't much. A few lines restored, bit of lotus blue where once there was none. But the wall is brighter than when you arrived, and that is enough. You wash your hands in a basin just outside, the water quickly turning cloudy with silt and colour. You splash a bit on your neck and face, the coolness offering a brief, blessed relief. As you walk away, the sound of chanting fades behind you, replaced by the noise of the village reclaiming the afternoon. It feels good, in an odd way, to return with your hands stained again, your clothes marked by effort, to be part of something, even if it's something crumbling. You make your way back through the streets with a small smile tucked quietly behind your lips. The day is not over, the work is not done, but for now there is enough to keep you going. The sun is higher now, and with it comes that dense, heavy silence that settles over the village in the afternoon, when every breath feels weighted, and the air itself seems to hesitate. You step into this hush, walking slowly back from the temple, your sandals scuffing softly along the sun-baked path. The streets are nearly empty. Most people are indoors or resting in whatever shade they can claim. A donkey tied to a post flaps its ears lazily at the flies, and somewhere nearby water drips from a jug, hitting the ground with a rhythm too slow to mark time by. You carry no tools, no basket, just your stained fingers and the smell of pigment clinging faintly to your skin. You feel tired, but not in the way that presses you flat. This kind of tiredness has a weight to it that's almost satisfying, like your body understands it was used for something, even if only to brush life back into a fading wall. When you reach home, your brother is sitting outside on an overturned basket, sharpening a knife on a stone he holds in his lap. The sound of metal scraping across stone is sharp but not jarring. It blends into the quiet, becomes part of it. He glances up as you approach, nods once, then returns to his work. The knife is not for anything urgent, just something he uses when odd jobs come through the village. Peeling bark, cutting ropes, trimming reeds. Keeping it sharp is more habit than necessity, a ritual that keeps his hands busy while his thoughts drift. You sit down nearby, stretching your legs and leaning back against the wall. Neither of you speaks right away. There's comfort in that too, in knowing you don't always have to fill the silence with words. After a while, he asks how the wall is coming along. You shrug and tell him the same thing you always do. A little better, maybe. The blue is holding in some places. The lines are coming back. He nods like he understands, though you're not sure either of you truly know what it means for a wall to be better. Still, there's a shared sense between you that it matters in some way, that anything built with patience and care must carry a kind of weight, even if it's only known to those who touch it. He offers you a piece of dried meat wrapped in cloth. You accept without asking where it came from. It's tough and salty, but filling, and as you chew, you watch the sky turn that pale shade of white it gets before it begins to dip toward orange. The wind picks up a little, just enough to stir the dust into small spirals at the edge of the street. Someone across the way is repairing a fence, the sound of hammering faint but steady. The rhythm of life here never fully stops. It just slows, coils up like a resting animal, and then stretches back out again when the sun gives it permission. Later, when the worst of the heat has passed, your brother suggests you both visit the canal. Not for fishing or work, just to cool your feet, maybe splash water over your heads and feel, even briefly, like the sun hasn't claimed every inch of you. You agree. There's something appealing in the idea of water right now. The way it slips through fingers, the way it carries the illusion of weightlessness. You walk together in silence, the kind born from long companionship rather than disinterest. The ground beneath your feet is cracked and warm, but the air grows easier with each step, the breeze carrying the faint scent of river reeds and wet stone. When you reach the canal, you sit on the edge and lower your feet into the slow-moving water. It's cooler than expected, and the sensation climbs up your legs, soothing the heat that's clung to you all day. Your brother dips his hands in and splashes water over his face, sighing quietly as the droplets run down his neck. You mimic him, letting the water trickle along your jaw, your throat soaking into your collar. For a while, neither of you speaks. You just sit, letting the current lick at your ankles, watching the sun paint long shadows across the water. As the sky darkens, you know you'll soon have to return home, light the lamp again, share the last of the bread or whatever else can be found. But for now, you let your eyes rest on the surface of the canal, the way it catches the light, the way it carries the day away in ripples. The return walk from the canal is quieter than usual, wrapped in that deepening shade that only late evening can bring. When the last warmth slips slowly off the rooftops and the dust settles into a softer hush beneath your sandals. The village has begun to fold itself into night again, one curtain at a time. Shadows lengthen, lanterns flicker to life one by one, and the streets seem to breathe in a slower rhythm. You and your brother don't speak on the way back, there's no need. The water on your legs has dried, leaving your skin cool and your feet heavy with a weariness that isn't unpleasant. It feels earned, the kind of tiredness that follows something simple and good, like shared quiet and the cool press of river currents. Back home, the light is low and golden, spilling lazily from the clay lamp you lit before leaving. The flame flickers as you enter, stirred by the breeze that follows you through the door, and you pause to close the curtain behind you, keeping the night where it belongs. Inside, everything is as you left it. The same mats, the same jars, the same soft scent of clay and linen, and the herbs tucked into the corner to ward off pests. It's strange how nothing changes here, and yet everything does. The walls feel different tonight, not because they've moved, but because you have. That slow hour by the canal shifted something, even if you can't name what. Your brother begins to gather the last of the food, setting it out on a piece of flat reed mat. Some bread softened slightly with oil, and a bit of fish that's been salted and dried to preserve it against the heat. It isn't much, but it will fill the hollow in your stomach well enough. You sit together and eat in silence, chewing slowly, letting each bite carry more meaning than its taste. The room grows darker as the lamp burns low. Outside, the sound of frogs has begun, their calls overlapping in the darkness, threading through the night with the soft chime of insects and the occasional splash of water far off in the fields. When the food is gone and your stomach sits comfortably still, you lie back on your mat and let your hands rest on your chest. Your brother does the same. The two of you speak quietly, almost like whispers, about nothing in particular. About the boy who dropped a basket of onions in the market. About the woman whose goat keeps escaping. About the cracked stone near the well that no one seems to want to repair. These little details are your world, strung together by ordinary days and the weight of survival. There is no talk of gods or kings or battles on distant borders, just the soft rhythm of life as you know it. Eventually your brother's breathing deepens, falling into that slow, even cadence that tells you he's drifted off. You stare at the ceiling a while longer, watching how the light moves, how the shadows shift and stretch across the reed slats and uneven plaster. Your mind circles around the image of the canal again, the stillness of the water, the way it reflected the sky, until both seemed to blur. There was a moment there, sitting with your feet in the current, when it felt like you could forget the hard angles of the world, when you could almost believe you were more than what the day demanded from your hands. Sleep doesn't come all at once, it never does. It arrives in pieces, like flakes of ash drifting down after a fire. You let your thoughts wander where they will, not trying to hold on to anything, just drifting. You think of the temple wall, the faint blue line you restored. You think of the date palm near the edge of the grove, the rough feel of bark beneath your back. You think of your mother's voice, faint and far now, almost like a dream, calling you to come inside before dark. And in that space between remembering and forgetting, you finally let go. Outside, the wind shifts softly through the alley. Somewhere nearby, a pot is knocked over by a stray cat or the night breeze. But inside, within these clay walls and woven mats, everything remains still. You wake before the light breaks, stirred not by sound, but by the odd stillness of the air. There's a heaviness to it, a kind of thick, unmoving pressure that settles on your chest as you lie there in the dim, blue dark, eyes still blurry with sleep. For a moment you think it might still be night, but then you notice the faintest hint of silver creeping along the edge of the curtain, and you know the sun is waiting just beyond the horizon. You shift slowly, quietly, careful not to wake your brother, though he stirs as you sit up. His breathing hitches once, then steadies, and you know he's not fully awake, just drifting between dreams and the day, the same way you often are in these early hours. You rise and step outside, the ground still cool beneath your feet, the alley wrapped in silence, save for the occasional rustle of a rat in the brush, or the soft clink of a loose shutter tapping gently against its frame. The village has not yet opened its eyes, and in that brief space before the world begins to stir, you feel a kind of peace settle over your shoulders, the kind that can only exist in moments that are too early for demands and too quiet for worry. You stretch your arms above your head and breathe in deeply, tasting the earthy tang of dust and the faint sweetness of something blooming somewhere unseen. Perhaps one of the small flowers that nestle at the edges of irrigation ditches, the kind people rarely notice unless they stop and crouch and look for them. You decide not to wait for orders today. You want to return to the temple wall before the others arrive, before the sun makes the stone too hot to touch, before the air turns heavy with heat and voices. There's something about working in the silence that appeals to you. The idea of smoothing pigment onto stone while the world still yawns and stretches its limbs. You take a bite of hard bread from last night, tuck the rest into a cloth along with your brush, and the small pot of leftover blue paint, and set off toward the eastern quarter where the temple rises against the awakening sky. The walk is brisk, your body moving with a rhythm born not from energy but from repetition. You know these turns by heart now. The chipped corner where someone carved their name long ago. The crooked brick near the well that catches your foot if you're not careful. You reach the temple just as the sky begins to shift from pale silver to soft gold, and the first birds begin their morning chatter among the rafters. The outer stones of the temple are still cool, shadowed by the columns and untouched by the sun's direct hand. You kneel at your usual spot and begin the work, dipping the brush lightly into the pigment and dragging it gently across the faint outlines of the lotus flower that has, over time, faded into near invisibility. There's something sacred in this moment. Not sacred in the way the priests mean when they chant in their slow, sonorous voices deep within the halls, but sacred in the way silence becomes a space you can breathe in. Your hands move with care, brushing life back into the stone one soft stroke at a time. You think of the artist who carved this flower long ago, someone like you, perhaps, tired, focused, moving steadily under the same sun. Did they wonder, like you do now, if anyone would ever notice their work centuries later? Did they imagine a life beyond the heat and dust and horse? Or did they simply let their hands guide them without question? As the sun lifts higher, light begins to spill through the gaps in the temple walls, catching the pigment in flashes and making it gleam just briefly before fading back into shadow. Others begin to arrive soon after, their footsteps echoing through the narrow halls. The quiet hum of tools and the rustle of cloth signal the start of the day in earnest. But for now, for these few moments, it feels like the wall belongs to you alone, a quiet secret shared between you and the stones. You step back once the jar of paint runs dry, stretching your arms behind you, admiring the soft blue curve of the flower, now glowing faintly against the aged plaster. It won't last forever. Dust and time will come again, but for now, it breathes, and that's enough. The wall now carries a hue it hadn't held in many years, maybe in generations. The blue, though faint and patchy in places, catches the morning light like a thread of sky stitched into the stone itself. You stand there, still and quiet, admiring the curve of the lotus petals that have come back to life beneath your fingers. You can't explain why it matters so much, but it does. It isn't just paint. It's presence, a reminder that someone once thought this wall was worth decorating, worth praising with colour and form. And now, for reasons you don't fully understand, you've been given the task of keeping that memory alive, if only for a little while longer. Your thoughts are interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind you, soft at first, then growing into the familiar shuffle of sandals against dust. One of the younger boys, barely taller than your shoulder, appears with a small bucket of fresh water and a bundle of cloth slung over his arm. He sets them down nearby without speaking and glances at your work. His eyes widen just a little, and though he doesn't say anything, his expression lingers with quiet curiosity. You nod at him, and he nods back, then disappears down the corridor to deliver the rest of his supplies. It's enough, that brief exchange. You've never needed words to know when something is seen and appreciated. The work continues around you, the usual slow unfolding of tasks as the other workers settle into their rhythms. Some carry new pots of pigment, others sweep away the thin layer of dust that returns each night like a stubborn memory. A priest passes by once, robed and silent, casting a sideways glance at the wall, before moving on with that serene detachment they all seem to carry. You keep working, not because anyone orders you to, but because the motion of your hands has become something close to meditation. Every brush stroke is a breath, every curve a whispered thought. Time slips quietly through the cracks in the stone. By late morning the air has thickened again, heat rising like steam from the floor. Your shirt clings to your back, damp from sweat, and your arms begin to ache from holding the same posture for too long. You wipe your forehead with the edge of your sleeve and lean back for a moment, resting against the base of the column behind you. The stone is warm now, not hot yet, but well on its way. You close your eyes for a moment and let the shadows drape themselves across your face, just breathing, letting yourself drift but not quite sleep. You can't afford that kind of luxury here. Not with the overseer's sharp eyes occasionally sweeping through the temple grounds like hawks over the reeds. You reach into the cloth pouch by your side and retrieve the last scrap of bread from earlier, chewing slowly, the dryness clinging to your throat. Still, it steadies you, gives your hands the energy to keep going. You know the work won't be finished today, maybe not even this week. The temple is vast, its walls worn by centuries of wind and ritual, and you are only one person. But there is something in that slow unfolding that gives you comfort. Nothing here is rushed. Even decay takes its time. The noon bell sounds faintly in the distance, echoing across the stones from the temple's heart. It's not a call to stop exactly, but a marking of time, a reminder that the sun has reached its peak and will soon begin to lean westward. You take it as your sign to pause. Carefully you clean your brushes, wrapping them in cloth so the bristles stay straight. You seal what little paint remains in the small pot and you stand, stretching your arms above your head until the joints crack softly in protest. As you leave the temple, the blue sky overhead blazes clear and unforgiving, and you raise your hand to shield your eyes. The road home is dusty but familiar, and as you walk it once more, your steps fall into their usual rhythm. You pass the potter's yard again, now alive with activity, clay spinning beneath practiced hands. A group of children runs past you, laughing, their feet kicking up small clouds as they race one another toward the river. Back in the alley, your home awaits, as still and unchanged as always, but inside something feels different. Not in the room or the air, but in the way you carry the day's work back with you. Not as a burden, but as a mark. Your hands may ache and your shoulders sag, but there is colour beneath your nails, and when you sleep tonight, you'll know that something lost to time has returned, even if just a little. The sun has already begun its slow descent when you return home, its golden light slanting across the alleyway, warming the walls with a soft glow that makes even the most cracked plaster seem like something beautiful. You pause at the doorway, leaning your shoulder against the familiar spot worn smooth from years of coming and going. Your breath moves more slowly now, and for a brief moment, you let yourself enjoy the quiet that hovers in the space between labour and rest. Inside, your brother is sitting cross-legged on the floor, sorting through a small bundle of reeds. He looks up as you enter, then back down, continuing his work without a word. You don't need to speak. The dust on your skin and the blue stains on your fingers already tell the story of where you've been. You set your pouch down gently in the corner and lower yourself onto the mat beside him. The coolness of the floor seeps into your legs as you stretch them out, pressing your palms to your thighs to steady the tremble there. He finishes tying a bundle of reeds into a neat roll and sets it aside, then reaches for another. The room smells of sun-warmed linen and old herbs, and in the faint light filtering through the curtain, you can see the fine motes of dust, morsas dancing in slow spirals, caught in the hush that fills every corner of your small home. After a while, your brother breaks the silence, asking if the wall is nearly done. You shake your head, smiling faintly. Not yet, you tell him. There's still more to uncover, more to bring back. He nods thoughtfully, then tells you about a merchant who came through the village that afternoon. He was selling grain, he says, but not the usual barley or emmer. This time it was millet, and people were whispering that it had come from beyond the hills. You ask if anyone bought it. He shrugs. A few, maybe. The price was high and most turned away, but it's something to remember, just in case supplies grow thin again. You both fall quiet after that, each of you drifting into your own thoughts, the kind that don't demand words, only presence. Later, as dusk deepens and the last light fades from the sky, you both share what little food you have left, some softened lentils and a handful of dried figs. It isn't much, but the warmth of it soothes the edge of your weariness, and as you eat, you let your shoulders finally relax. Outside, the village has begun to settle once more. The sounds shift from the clatter of pots and voices to the gentle rustle of sleeping mats and the low murmur of families drawing close. Somewhere in the distance, someone plays a flute, the notes winding gently through the dark like a breeze through tall grass. It lingers at your window for a moment before drifting on, carrying with it the hush of night. You stretch out on your mat, pulling the cloth lightly over your chest as the air cools. Your brother lies nearby, his breathing already slow and even, and you listen to it like you would a lullaby, familiar and steady. As your eyes begin to close, your mind drifts once again to the temple wall. You picture the blue pigment catching the sun, the way the lotus petals curve like whispers pressed into stone. You wonder who else will see it, who might stand where you stood, brush in hand, and feel the echo of all that came before. And in that quiet space just before sleep finds you, you think not of how hard the day was, or how long tomorrow might be, but of the simple, silent work of making something last, of leaving behind even a trace of beauty in a world that so often foreshorts. Morning stirs gently around you, the soft hush of dawn wrapping your limbs before your eyes even open. You lie still for a while, listening to the first notes of waking life outside the walls. A low creak of a cartwheel rolls over packed clay. The bleat of a goat echoes distantly, followed by the swish of water being poured into a trough. Someone calls out to another in a voice still thick with sleep. You pull the cloth back from your chest and sit up slowly, your body responding in the slow rhythm that now feels familiar, like a song your bones have learned by heart. The air is cooler this morning, faintly touched with the dampness that floats off the river before the sun dries it out. It clings to the inside of your lungs and makes you breathe a little deeper, as if your body knows it needs to store it before the heat returns. Your brother is already up, his spot on the mat empty, the reed curtain shifting gently, where he must have passed through moments ago. You rub your eyes and gather yourself, reaching for the water jar and letting the first splash shock your skin into alertness. The cold helps, it always does. You chew the last fig from last night's meal and slip on your sandals, already aware of the day that stretches before you. There's no pause in this life, no day off, no soft bed waiting after a stretch of hard work. There's only the next step, the next task, the quiet understanding that rest will come only when the body gives in, not before. You walk toward the temple again, feet tracing the path they've come to know so well. The streets are more alive than they were yesterday at this hour, which means something is stirring. You pass a knot of men gathered near the well, their voices low but intense. You catch snatches of words. Merchant, wait, foul measure. But you keep walking. There are always disputes over trade. It's part of life here. Someone always feels cheated, and someone else pretends not to notice. It'll be settled one way or another. It always is. The temple rises ahead, its shadow still stretched long across the ground, cool and inviting in a world quickly heating. You nod to the boy from the day before, who greets you now with the faintest smile as he carries a fresh bundle of cloths under his arm. His sandals slap gently against the stones, and the sound follows you down the corridor to the inner wall. You return to your place and kneel without thinking, your hand already reaching for the wrapped brush, your eyes settling on the faded outline of a figure halfway lost to time. You work, for hours, maybe more. Time ceases to be something you measure here. It becomes movement, sensation. The feel of pigment against stone, the drag of bristles over lines worn nearly smooth. Your back aches. Your knees feel as though they might lock, but you don't stop. The work is steadying. It binds you to something ancient and slow and patient. And though no one watches, no one thanks you or speaks your name, you continue as if your hands have been commanded by the stones themselves. When you finally rise, your legs resist and your shoulders throb, but you feel something deeper than fatigue. You feel the peace of having moved with purpose. The wall glows faintly now, its colours like whispers newly awakened. You press your fingers lightly to the stone, not to mark it, but to feel its warmth, its solidness beneath your skin. Outside, the sun has climbed high again, and the heat is creeping across the ground like a living thing. You shield your eyes and begin the walk home, your body heavy with the weight of the day, your mind quiet in that way it gets when the work has gone deep enough to still the noise. As you near the alley, your brother appears ahead, waving you over with a curious glint in his eyes and a half grin on his face. Something, it seems, has happened. You quicken your pace as your brother beckons, curiosity blooming beneath the dull ache in your legs. The sun presses down, but the glint in his eyes draws you forward more than any breeze or shadow ever could. When you reach him, he doesn't speak right away, just gestures for you to follow. His steps are quick, almost light, and it makes you wonder what could possibly lift his spirits on a day like this, when the dust clings too stubbornly to every surface and the air itself feels tired. You trail behind him, weaving through the narrow lanes that twist between mud brick homes, passing neighbours who glance up briefly before returning to their quiet rhythms. The village seems unchanged, still wrapped in its usual hum of labour and survival, and yet there's something different in the way your brother moves, as though the weight of the day has loosened its grip on him. He stops finally near the western edge of the settlement, where the canal bends and the reeds grow taller, thicker, curling over themselves like a curtain. Nestled there in the curve of the water is a boat, not a grand one, but newer than most you've seen. Its sides are firm and tightly bound, its ropes not yet worn by sun and use. A man stands beside it, arms crossed, eyes scanning the slow current. Your brother nods toward him, murmuring just loud enough for you to hear that this man is a cousin of someone from the northern villages. He's offering passage upriver for a few workers in exchange for help along the journey. Repairs, cargo, maybe the guiding of oxen. Not coin, but food and favour. It isn't much, but it's more than most here have been offered in months. You study the boat. You've never gone far. Beyond this village, not really. The thought of travelling along the water, of seeing what lies beyond the low ridge of hills that always frame your sky, tugs at something deep in your chest. But you also think of the temple wall, of the fading blue you just began to coax back into life. You think of your mat, your brother's slow, steady breath at night, the quiet familiarity of your corner of the world. The ache in your legs returns, reminding you that your place here is one carved from habit and dust. Your brother turns to you, his expression cautious now, more serious. He says it's your choice. He hasn't said yes to the man, not yet. But the idea has caught in him like a spark. You see it. That old flicker of something more, the longing that sometimes settles behind his eyes when he thinks you're not looking. He says you'd only be gone a few days, maybe a week, just far enough to see the bend in the river you've heard stories about since you were children, maybe longer if the journey stretches. He smiles a little when he says that, like the idea doesn't scare him, like he'd welcome it. You look again at the boat, the man, the water, then back toward the temple, though you can't see it from here. You imagine the wall in the quiet morning light, waiting. But you also imagine the wind on the river, the way the reeds must whisper differently beyond the village. You wonder if there are walls there too, covered in old colour, waiting to be seen, or maybe just people who don't know yet that stories are hidden in stone. The sun catches on the water and the whole surface shimmers. Your brother waits, patient, still holding the moment open between you, and for the first time in a long while you feel the weight of choice. Not duty, not routine, but the real shape of a path splitting, both directions filled with silence and sky. You don't answer your brother right away. The question sits between you like a smooth stone pulled from the river, unassuming but heavy, waiting to be picked up. He doesn't press. Instead, he steps back from the water and kneels beside a patch of reeds, pulling one loose and turning it slowly in his fingers. The man with the boat watches you both from under the shade of his head wrap, but says nothing. Perhaps he's grown used to waiting, or perhaps he already knows what your answer will be. You crouch beside your brother, staring at the current. It moves slowly here, swirling in lazy arcs, carrying bits of leaf and reed with it, as if even the river hesitates to leave. In the silence, you think of the wall again, not just the colours you brought back, but the feel of the stone beneath your fingers, the way your brush left faint lines of blue like veins awakening in old skin. You picture the dust in the temple corridors, the hushed steps of the priests, the boy with the bundle of cloths who never speaks but always seems to notice. You feel a tug in your chest, the kind that comes not from fear or doubt, but from rootedness. There's a kind of gravity in familiarity. Even if the days are hard and the food scarce, there's comfort in knowing the shape of your world. And yet the water calls, not with promises of greatness or riches, but with something softer, possibility. The thought of seeing beyond the village, of touching different stones, hearing different songs sung in the morning air, the thought of breathing a different rhythm, even if only for a little while. You speak finally, your voice quieter than you expect, telling your brother that maybe it's time, just for a short while, just to see. He doesn't smile at first, or he just nods, slow and thoughtful, like he expected it but didn't want to break the moment with certainty. He stands and brushes off his knees, then tells the man with the boat. The man grunts, then gestures toward the edge of the dock. You're to return at first light, with whatever you wish to carry. There's space enough for a bundle each, nothing more. The rest will be shared. A mat, the work, the meals. You walk back through the village as the sun begins to dip, casting long shadows across the walls. The streets are beginning to quiet, the way they always do when the day folds in on itself. People glance your way as you pass, their eyes curious but unreadable. No one asks where you've been. No one asks why your brother's steps are lighter than usual. At home, the light inside is soft, the lamp already lit, its glow painting the walls gold. You sit down together, laying out what food remains and speaking quietly about what you'll need. Not much. A spare tunic. Your tools, of course, a bit of dried bread. He speaks of the route, what he's heard of it, where the river bends and where the banks narrow. Later, as the sky shifts to indigo and the first stars blink to life, you lie on your mat and stare at the ceiling. You wonder how far the boat will carry you. You wonder what the days will look like beyond the reach of your village. Whether the air smells different there, whether the people's laughter is louder or quieter, or something else entirely. Your body is tired, but your thoughts are restless, weaving possibilities like threads on a loom you can't see. Eventually, sleep takes you, soft and slow, and in your dream you are floating, not away but through water and time and stories not yet painted, toward walls that wait quietly beneath layers of dust, ready to be remembered. Morning returns before your body is ready for it. The sky outside is still washed in that early, uncertain grey when you open your eyes, and the room is quiet except for the occasional creak of the wooden frame, stretching with the shift in temperature. You don't rise right away. You lie there for a few moments, letting your breath find its rhythm, listening to your brother as he moves around the room with a lightness that feels both careful and expectant. He's already dressed, his bundle tied tightly with a strip of old cloth resting near the door. You can smell the faint smoke of the neighbour's breakfast fire curling through the cracks in the walls, mingling with the dryness of the morning air. When you finally sit up, your limbs feel heavy, not with regret, but with the quiet weight of change. You fold your mat, roll your belongings, what little you've chosen to take, and tie them together with deliberate hands. Your brush, your cloth, a bit of hardened bread wrapped in fig leaves, not much else. You glance around the room as you finish, your eyes catching on familiar corners, the lines where the walls meet the floor, the shadowed spot near the ceiling where a bird once nested during the flood season. These small things settle in your chest like stones. Not painful, just reminders of what you've been part of, what you'll return to, perhaps changed. Your brother nods to you when you stand, and the two of you slip out into the morning without ceremony. The streets are still mostly empty, though a few early risers are out carrying jugs or setting up baskets at the edge of the market. A child, half asleep, is curled against a doorway, a goat chewing quietly beside her. No one stops you, no one calls your name, and somehow that feels fitting. Like your leaving is not a rupture, but a continuation, one current joining another. The dock looks different in the soft light. The boat rests gently against the mooring post, rocking with the faint tug of the current. The man from yesterday is already there, his head turned toward the river as if listening for something beyond its surface. He doesn't speak when you approach. He simply gestures to the space where your bundles will rest and steps aside as you climb in. The wood beneath your feet is warm from the memory of sun, though the day has only just begun. The smell of the river wraps around you, earthy, damp, here tinged with the bitterness of silt and the sweetness of decaying reeds. It is a smell that speaks of movement and roots all at once. More passengers arrive slowly, a pair of older men with thin shoulders and dark hands, a woman carrying a wrapped bundle that could be either child or clay. They board without words, the quiet between them filled with the understanding that this is not a journey made for conversation. It is a journey made for work, for witnessing, perhaps for something as simple as watching the bank slip by. When the boat finally pushes off, the village recedes gently, not pulled away, but allowed to drift behind like a dream, thinning in the light. You watch the rooftops shrink, the reed patches bend in the breeze, the smoke of morning fires curling into the sky until it disappears. Your brother sits beside you, legs drawn up, eyes fixed ahead. You do the same, watching the river unfold like a scroll, its edges blank and waiting. You don't know where the water will take you exactly, nor what you'll find on its winding path. But as the current begins to carry you forward, you feel something loosen in your chest, not a letting go, but a quiet opening, as if the dust of your days in the temple has given way to air again, and you are breathing not just because you must, but because you are meant to move, to see, to mark the world in quiet ways. The blue beneath your nails has not yet faded. The river winds like a patient storyteller, taking its time between words, its surface broken only by the gentle slice of the boat's bow as it moves forward. You sit near the edge, knees pulled up, your hands resting loosely in your lap. The sun has not yet climbed high, and the light that touches the water is soft and golden, filtering through thin strands of mist still lifting from the surface. Your brother sits close, silent like the rest of the passengers, his gaze following the curve of the bank where papyrus grows thick, brushing lightly against the water. The boat creaks now and then, a familiar wooden groan that speaks of old journeys and repairs made with careful hands. A low splashing comes from somewhere behind you, where one of the older men scoops water into a small jar, perhaps to cool his face or offer a drink to the bundle carried by the woman seated beside him. You watch the bank slip past, not quickly but steadily, each turn revealing a little more of the world that has always waited just beyond your reach. Villages come into view like murmurs, not grand or loud, just quiet gatherings of earth-coloured homes, and the figures who move among them, hunched over nets or walking in slow procession with baskets balanced high on their heads. The world here does not seem very different from your own, and yet it carries a strangeness that sits just beneath the skin of familiarity. Even the trees look like they lean in differently, the wind folding their shadows along the shore in ways you're not used to. You wonder if the people in these villages look up and notice your boat as it passes, if they see you and wonder where you're going, or if they simply carry on, knowing that the river always brings people they'll never meet again. The hours stretch gently, marked only by the changing angle of light and the slow rise in heat. Your stomach begins to tighten with hunger, but no one complains. The woman unwraps her bundle at last, revealing a small jar of dates and flatbread which she shares quietly with the man beside her. Your brother leans toward you and offers a strip of dried fish he tucked away from the morning's meal. You chew slowly, the salt sharp on your tongue, and sip from your water jar, careful not to take too much. There's no telling when you'll be able to fill it again. By midday the sun hangs high and white, and the air turns heavier. The boat slows near a bend where the current grows shallow. The man guiding the vessel climbs over the side, his feet disappearing into the brown water as he walks along the bank, rope in hand, pulling the boat forward with practiced strength. Others step, off too, pushing against the side of the hull to guide it around a patch of reeds. You stay on board, the soles of your feet warming against the wood, your eyes tracing the distant ridges that rise low on the horizon like a promise. You wonder what lies beyond them, if there are temples there too, or markets with colours you've never seen. Maybe just more dust and stone, but even that would feel new, if only because your eyes haven't yet grown tired of it. When the boat resumes its path, there's a moment of stillness that sinks deep, the kind that wraps around your thoughts and holds them close. You find yourself thinking again of the wall back home, of the blue, of the curve of your brush as it traced the lotus petal you left unfinished. For a heartbeat, you wonder if someone else will finish it, if the pigment will wait for your return or fade quietly back into the plaster. You don't know, and strangely, you feel no urgency to find out. For now, the river carries you, and that's enough. By the time the heat becomes too thick to ignore, the man steering the boat gestures toward a narrow inlet shaded by a cluster of sycamore trees leaning gently over the water. He eases the boat into the cove with a quiet authority, and when it bumps slightly against the bank, he ties it off with a swift knot. No one needs to be told what to do. As if guided by the instinct or memory, each person begins to move, collecting bundles, stretching limbs, stepping onto the dry patch of land that offers shelter and a brief reprieve from the relentless sun. You follow, feet pressing into soft earth that's darker and damper than the dust of your village. It holds the coolness of the river and smells faintly of moss and old wood. You find a place to sit near the base of one of the trees, its roots sprawling like fingers reaching for comfort. The shade is deep here, and when the breeze stirs, it brings with it a soft hush, like a whispered lullaby. Your brother settles nearby, his back resting against the trunk, eyes half closed, one arm draped across his knees. The others spread out in quiet circles, some sharing food, others simply lying back and letting their bodies relax into the ground. There's no chatter, only the occasional murmur or the low crunch of someone biting into bread. The water flows gently past, and you watch it, following its curve as it disappears behind a patch of reeds. A heron stands in the shallows, perfectly still, waiting for a ripple, a flicker beneath the surface. You feel yourself slipping into a kind of stillness too, the kind that doesn't require sleep, only quiet. You listen to the wind rustle the leaves overhead, to the soft shifting of people around you. Everything here feels slow, in a way that you hadn't known you missed until now. Not the slow of chores or waiting, but the kind that comes when there's nothing demanding your hands, no voice calling your name. Eventually, your brother reaches into his satchel and pulls out a small clay disc, its surface etched with a rough pattern. He turns it in his fingers, then holds it out to you. You recognize it immediately. A game you both used to play as children, before the temple, before the endless cycles of work. You smile and take it, your fingers closing around the familiar shape. He finds a couple of stones to mark points and clears a space between you, drawing the board into the dirt with the edge of a stick. The others glance your way as the game begins, a few with mild amusement, but no one interrupts. The rules are simple, the moves familiar. But what matters isn't who wins. It's the rhythm of play, the soft thud of the disc landing, the shared glances, the brief, wordless laughter when a clever move catches the other off guard. The game ends with no clear winner, and neither of you pushes to decide. The sun has lowered slightly, its glare softened, and the man by the boat begins to untie the mooring. People gather their things without a word, the temporary peace of the grove folding back into motion. You rise, brushing the dirt from your tunic, and glance once more at the shaded bank, at the carved lines of the game still faintly visible in the soil. You wonder if someone will come across them later and pause to trace them with a finger, imagining the hands that played. Back on the boat, the silence resumes. The river stretches ahead, its path broad and smooth, and as the current begins to pull you forward once more, you lean back slightly, letting the wind lift your hair. The shore fades again into movement and blur, and your thoughts drift toward what may lie further ahead. You do not know, but you are no longer afraid of not knowing. As the afternoon lengthens, the world begins to soften. The harsh lines of the midday sun blur into gold, and the river seems to ease into itself, flowing with a gentler sway that rocks the boat like a cradle. The air remains warm, but the sting has left it, replaced by something more forgiving. The passengers have grown quiet again, lulled by the rhythm of water and wood. You sit with your head resting against the side of the boat, your gaze following the shifting shapes on the riverbank, patches of grass bending in the breeze, crumbling walls of half-forgotten storehouses, the occasional flicker of movement as birds dart low over the water and vanish into the reeds. Your brother sits close, arms folded loosely, his eyes closed but his breath steady. It's hard to tell whether he's asleep or simply drifting inward. You don't speak. Words feel unnecessary here. Where time stretches and narrows at once, where the river carries not just your body but something deeper, something you can't quite name. You watch the shadows lengthen and feel a strange stillness settle inside your chest, like a door you hadn't known was open has quietly swung shut, closing out the noise of your everyday life. For the first time since you boarded, you realise you haven't thought of the temple wall for a while, the blue pigment, the curve of the lotus. It no longer tugs at you the way it did, not because it matters less, but because you've started to understand something larger, something about how moments belong to where they happen, and how you can carry them forward without needing to return. Ahead, the river begins to narrow slightly, pressed in by low banks dotted with date palms and scrub brush. The water darkens, not from depth, but from the way the light hits it, painting the surface with a richer tone, almost like oil. The man steering the boat shifts his weight and adjusts the rope tied at the front. He calls softly to the woman with the bundle, who steps forward and helps guide the boat with a long wooden pole, pressing against the riverbed to keep the vessel centred. You and your brother offer your hands as well, not needing to be asked. The work is simple and rhythmic, press, pull, reset, your body falling into it easily, thankful for something to do. It isn't long before a new settlement appears in the distance. Not large, but more than a handful of homes. You can make out the shape of a small dock, a few thatched roofs, and the flutter of linens drying in the breeze. Smoke curls up from somewhere within, and the scent of cooking, faint and spicy, reaches you before the boat even touches land. The man nods toward the dock, signalling a brief stop. He speaks for the first time in hours, telling everyone they'll have a bit of time to stretch their legs, refill water, maybe trade for food. You step off onto the bank and feel the earth shift beneath your sandals, softer than back home, as if the land here has been fed more generously by the river's touch. The village feels quieter than your own, less crowded, less hurried. You walk with your brother past a row of baskets filled with onions and dried herbs, exchanging a few words with an old woman who offers you a handful of almonds for one of your cloths. You accept without hesitation. Something about the moment feels fair. You chew slowly on the nuts as you walk back toward the boat, the flavour rich and grounding. The people here do not stare, but they do notice. Their eyes hold the same quiet questions you carried not long ago. Where are they going? Why are they here? You do not answer, not because you don't know, but because you've learned already that sometimes the journey itself is the answer. The path, the silence, the soft pull of the current. It carries you, shapes you, reminds you that you are always becoming something new, even when you feel still, even when your hands are empty and your words are few. The sun is already slipping downward when you return to the boat, casting long shadows across the ground that stretch like fingers reaching for rest. You feel the warmth still lingering on your skin, but it has lost its edge, softening now into something almost tender. The village behind you remains quiet as you push off from the dock once more, and though the people have begun to retreat indoors and the fires are being stoked for evening meals, the scent of their cooking still drifts across the water, as if the river itself wants to carry it with you. You settle back into your place beside your brother, the taste of almonds still faint on your tongue, and watch the shoreline begin to fall away behind you, folded again into memory. This stretch of the journey feels different, not because of anything that's changed in the world around you, but because of something quieter that's shifted inside. You no longer find yourself counting the hours or watching for signs of arrival. Instead, your thoughts drift more easily, like the current beneath the boat. You think of home, yes, but not in the sharp way you once did. Now it lives in you like an old rhythm, a drum beat that plays beneath everything you see. You think of your father's voice, rough and deep, softened with age and long hours under the sun. You think of the day your mother gave you your first brush and the way she pressed your fingers around it as if handing you more than just a tool, a memory perhaps, a purpose. You think of the temple wall, but only in passing. It is no longer the centre. It is simply one stone among many. Your brother leans close and points ahead. A group of birds has begun to gather near the water's edge, their wings flickering like fire against the darkening sky. Egrets, maybe, or cranes. You aren't sure. Their legs move delicately through the shallows, their beaks dipping and lifting with a rhythm that matches the lapping of the waves. You both watch in silence as the flock lifts suddenly, all at once, as if answering a call too quiet for your ears. They rise and swirl, then disappear behind a bend in the river. You wonder where they're going, if they follow this river the way you do, or if they find their own paths among the winds and reeds. Evening deepens, and the man at the helm lights a small lantern that swings gently from the centre of the boat. Its glow casts soft halos on the faces around you, carving out features in warm gold. You can see the woman cradling her bundle, humming something under her breath, a melody low and slow, like a lullaby passed down through generations. The older men sit quietly, their eyes half-lidded, bodies still but not asleep. Your brother unwraps a piece of cloth and offers you a small corner of bread he had saved, and you take it with a quiet nod. The bread is dry, but it settles in your stomach like something more, like care. The river narrows again as night pulls its blanket across the sky, stars emerging one by one above the curve of the hills. You find yourself gazing upward, tracing the patterns you learned as a child. The hunter, the crocodile, the boat that carries souls to the next life. It's strange to see them from here, from the middle of the water, where the air is clearer and the light of the village does not touch the dark. They feel closer, now like you could reach out and brush your fingers across them if only the boat would pause long enough. But it does not. The river keeps moving as it always does, and you sit there in its arms, carried gently forward, the weight of the world behind you, and a quiet open sky ahead. Night folds over the river like a soft cloth, and the boat drifts forward with the gentle hush of water slipping beneath its hull. The lantern's glow swings in a slow arc with the rhythm of the current, casting ripples of gold across the boat's wooden ribs and the faces of those aboard. You lie back, arms crossed beneath your head, watching the stars settle more firmly into place above you. The sky here feels wider than it ever did at home, more open, like a deep well of quiet that invites you to fall into it. The air is cooler now, touched with the scent of wet earth and night blossoms blooming somewhere along the shore. There is no wind, just the steady movement of the river and the occasional creak of the boat, and in that space silence becomes something alive, a presence that wraps around your thoughts and carries them gently out to sea. Your brother is still awake beside you, his silhouette faint but steady. Every so often you hear the slow exhale of his breath, the same pattern you knew as children, back when you shared a bed woven from straw and dreams that felt too big for your small world. You think of those days now with a strange tenderness, not with longing, but with a quiet sense of distance, as though those memories belong to someone who still lives inside you, but whom you've grown away from, gently and without bitterness. Time has pulled you forward, as the river does now, and it's not as sadness you feel, only awareness that the past does not wait. At some point the boat slows. You feel it more than see it, the way your body shifts slightly with the change in speed, the way the murmur of the water softens. The man at the front dips his pole into the shallows, guiding the vessel toward a soft bank lined with tall grass. There's no village here, no lights, just the hush of reeds and the glint of stars. He speaks low, saying they'll rest here for a few hours, maybe until first light. It's safer than pushing forward in the dark where sandbars and fallen trees might wait. You sit up and help tie the boat down, your hands working without needing instruction. You've learnt the language of motion now, how to move quietly, how to listen to what's not said. Once the boat is secured, everyone begins to settle. Mats are unrolled, blankets drawn close. Someone builds a tiny fire on the bank, more for comfort than warmth, and it flickers like a heartbeat in the darkness. You and your brother stretch out near the edge, just close enough to feel the coolness of the grass, the soft murmur of insects in the underbrush. He asks if you're tired, and you shrug, saying, "Not really," but you close your eyes anyway, letting your body sink into the earth. Sleep comes slowly, as it does when your mind is full. You drift in and out, caught between dreams and the steady rhythm of the river nearby. You dream of walking along the riverbank alone, the stars overhead reflected in the water like a second sky. In your dream you carry a brush, but there is no wall to paint, only stones scattered across the ground, each one etched with colours you've never seen. You kneel to touch one, and when your fingers brush its surface, the colour blooms like light, rising into the air like dust catching the sun. You wake before dawn, just as the sky begins to shift from deep black to the faintest breath of blue. The fire is still glowing, though only barely, and most of the others are still asleep. You sit up slowly, stretching your arms, as your breath rising in small clouds that vanish quickly in the warming air. Beside you, your brother stirs, blinking at the pale horizon. Neither of you speaks. There's no need. The river is waiting, and so are you. The sky is still tinted with that hushed shade of dawn when the boat is set in motion again. The fire from the night has dwindled into nothing, leaving only the faint scent of ash behind. And dew clings to the grass like a breath held too long. As you and your brother help untie the moorings and push off from the bank, you feel a peculiar stillness within you, as if sleep has not yet released its grip entirely. The river welcomes the boat back without protest, its surface smooth and waiting, the kind of surface that makes you want to whisper rather than speak aloud. The others are waking slowly, their faces touched by the delicate light of early morning. Some rub their eyes and yawn into their sleeves. One of the older men stirs a small pot of something over a new fire at the centre of the boat. You catch the scent of barley and salt, and it settles deep in your chest like the memory of home. As the boat moves forward, the sky begins to colour more boldly. The palest pink brushes the eastern edge, then folds gently into gold. Birds rise in soft waves from the reeds, wheeling into the sky in small flocks before settling again further down the shore. The land on either side of the river seems to stretch and blink awake, its shapes sharpening in the morning light. You watch the curve of a distant hill emerge clearly for the first time, revealing a line of palm trees standing like sentinels in the distance. You wonder how many travellers have passed this same place, watched these same trees, listened to the same chorus of morning birdsong that fills the air, now like a tide lifting from the grass. The warm drink makes its way around the boat, offered in silence from hand to hand. When it reaches you, you cradle the clay cup in both palms, letting the steam warm your fingers before taking a slow sip. It's bitter but nourishing, the kind of flavour that reminds you that you are part of something older than hunger. As the sun rises higher, casting shadows beneath the edges of your tunic and warming the crown of your head, the boat begins to slow again, this time not for rest or drift, but because a new place is coming into view. You feel it before you see it. The subtle shift in how the others sit up, how the man at the front of the boat stands taller, his eyes fixed ahead with the familiarity. It is a village, yes, but not like the last. Larger, more formed. Stone walls here, not just mud brick. A broad dock stretches out into the river, and even from a distance you can see movement. People walking purposefully, unloading baskets, tending goats, repairing nets. It thrums with the quiet kind of life that builds up over generations, the kind that settles deep into the bones of a place. As the boat pulls in, the man guiding it raises his voice for the first time since dawn. This is where he parts ways with the river, he says. This is where the journey ends for now. You step off slowly, your legs adjusting again to solid ground, your pack slung over your shoulder. Your brother follows, his eyes scanning the open space like he's measuring the width of this new world. Around you, people move with the rhythm of a place that does not pause for visitors. You walk past women pounding grain into wide basins, men mending ropes along the wall, children darting between doorways with arms full of fruit or reeds. The air smells different here, richer, saltier, filled with the labour of living. You don't know how long you'll stay. The man who brought you here has already turned away, his boat drifting gently into the hands of a boy waiting on the dock. You and your brother exchange a glance, something like a question in your eyes, but neither of you speaks it aloud. You simply keep walking, deeper into the village, letting the unknown unfold before you like the next line of a story already begun. The village welcomes you not with words or gestures, but with the rhythm of its own unspoken life. It is the kind of place that has no need to announce itself, where each motion is purposeful and every glance, though brief, carries the weight of recognition without familiarity. You and your brother move through the narrow paths between low stone walls and open courtyards, your steps quiet, your eyes alert to everything and nothing at once. There are no signs pointing where to go, but something about the flow of people tells you that if you walk long enough, the right direction will find you. The dust here is lighter than at home, more like powder than grit, and it clings gently to your sandals, softening the sound of your steps. You pass a woman stirring clay in a wide, shallow basin, her arms brown with effort and sun, her expression focused and still. A boy crouches beside her, watching, his fingers busy shaping something small, a figure maybe, or a bowl. Further along, a pair of elders sit cross-legged in the shade of a woven canopy, playing a game marked by stones and etched lines in the dirt. They glance up as you pass, not startled, just momentarily aware of your unfamiliar silhouettes. Then they return to their game, and the village continues breathing in and out around you. You pause when you reach a square where the walls open into a larger space, where baskets overflow with dates and onions, and voices rise slightly in barter and exchange. A girl offers you a gourd filled with water, her smile neither shy nor bold, just matter of fact. You thank her and drink slowly, letting the coolness settle inside you like a balm. Your brother leans close and suggests you find work here, at least for a while. There is food, shelter, things that need doing, and the journey, he says, doesn't have to keep going just because you stepped off a boat. You both agree to ask around. You split up, not far, just enough to follow your instincts. You move toward a courtyard where a wall half shadowed by palm trees catches your eye. There is pigment there, though faded. A mural, old and cracked, but still clinging to the stone like a memory that refuses to be lost. You step closer, kneeling before it, tracing the air in front of its lines. The blue is nearly gone, but the shape remains, and you see in its outlines the suggestion of movement, a figure dancing perhaps, or kneeling in prayer. A man nearby notices your interest. He walks over, wiping his hands on a cloth tucked into his belt. He asks if you know the craft, and when you nod, he gestures to the side wall that has long been bare, saying it was once meant to be part of the same scene. The artist who began it grew old before finishing. No one since has taken it up. You run your fingers across the wall, feeling the texture, the tiny pits and grooves that will guide your brush like riverbeds guiding rain. You tell him you can do it, that you'd like to. He nods once, not overly impressed or disbelieving, just accepting. He tells you the tools are kept in the back and someone will show you where. Then he walks away, leaving the space quiet again. Later, as the sun begins to lean westward, your brother returns with news of his own. He has found a place to help, loading grain at the edge of the river, a trade made in effort rather than coin. You both sit beneath the low wall, sharing what little bread remains between you. The village hums around you, unchanged but open, and for the first time since the journey began, you feel as though something has circled back to meet you. Not home, but something like it. Something shaped in stone and silence, in brushstrokes waiting to begin. You return to the wall early the next morning just as the village begins to stir. The air is still cool and the stones beneath your feet are damp with the night's breath. The sun is barely awake, its light stretching thin and golden across the tops of the palm trees that frame the courtyard. A few children shuffle past carrying baskets of dried rushes, their chatter soft, not yet filled with the energy that comes later in the day. You kneel in front of the wall again, as if greeting something familiar, and gently unroll the cloth that holds your few brushes and a jar of what pigment remains. It isn't much, but you know how to stretch it, how to coax colour from even the faintest traces. That's something the temple taught you, among many things that had little to do with words and everything to do with attention. The surface of the wall is rougher than the ones you worked on before, and older too. Your fingers brush over its unevenness, and you listen with your hands the way your mother once taught you to listen to stories told in the hush between sentences. You begin not with broad strokes, but with outlines. Faint at first, careful. You trace the path of a figure already half there, faded but not forgotten. It feels like meeting someone halfway. The brush glides with a familiar resistance, tugging gently at your wrist as it follows the ancient lines. You lose track of time almost immediately. The sounds of the village recede, becoming a soft backdrop, the kind of quiet that holds the shape of daily life without needing your attention. Around midday, a shadow falls across your shoulder. You glance up to find an older woman watching you. Her expression is unreadable, but her eyes are sharp. She asks nothing, says nothing, just studies the work. After a few long moments, she nods once and walks away, leaving behind the smell of roasted onions and a faint jingling of bracelets. You smile without knowing why and return to your task. Your brother visits in the late afternoon, his tunic dusty, the curve of his shoulders heavier than it was this morning. He watches you for a while without speaking, then sits with his back against the opposite wall, sipping from a clay jar and closing his eyes. He doesn't need to say anything. The silence between you is the easy kind, the kind built on shared days and quiet meals. After a while he asks how much longer the work will take. You shrug. It could be days, it could stretch into weeks, depending on how the wall responds, on how the colours hold. He nods, not impatient. Then he tells you about the boy who sings while loading grain, how his voice cracks in the funniest way when he reaches too high. The story makes you laugh. A small, honest sound that breaks gently against the stone walls and rolls out into the warm air. By the time the sun leans low again, the figure on the wall is nearly complete. It kneels with one arm raised, as if beckoning the wind or calling down memory from the sky. You feel something shift in your chest when you step back and look at it. Not pride, not even satisfaction. Something smaller. A kind of peace, like you've given the wall its voice back. As the last light fades, you gather your tools and tuck them away. The village begins to hum with evening again, the scent of dinner drifting through open doors, the sound of water being poured and footsteps returning. Your brother joins you, and together you walk back to the small shelter offered to you, not speaking, not needing to. The air is warm and soft on your skin, and the night wraps around you like a familiar blanket. You sleep deeply that night, and your dreams are filled not with questions, but with quiet. The morning arrives without fanfare, seeping slowly into the sky with that familiar softness that you've come to cherish. It paints the edges of the village in pale gold, stretching shadows across the walls like threads waiting to be gathered. You wake before the birds begin their song, wrapped in the warmth of your blanket and the comfort of silence. The air carries the faint scent of earth and dried grain, and for a long moment you simply lie there with your eyes open, watching the light creep across the ceiling. There is no urgency in your limbs, no weight pressing on your thoughts, just breath and time and a stillness that feels earned. You rise slowly, stepping into your sandals and slipping through the curtain that marks the doorway. Outside, the village hums its quiet morning rhythm. A woman sweeps the dust from her doorstep with steady strokes. A child leads a small goat by a rope, its hooves tapping lightly against the stone path. Smoke rises in thin spirals from the cooking fires, curling up into the sky as if offering a blessing to the day. You make your way back to the wall, not out of habit, but out of something more tender. A farewell, perhaps. A final moment with the space that welcomed your hands and your silence. The figure you painted waits there, calm and unchanged. The lines are soft in the morning light. The colours muted but steady. You run your fingers gently along the edge of the mural, not touching the paint, only feeling the coolness of the stone beneath. It holds your gesture without resistance, as if understanding that this too is part of the craft. You smile quietly, not for anyone else to see, and whisper a few words you don't need to remember. Not a prayer, not a promise, just a breath shed there between you and the wall. When you return to your brother, he's already gathered his things. His face is calm, his movements unhurried. You don't ask where he wants to go next, and he doesn't ask you. There's no need. The river still runs, and the world beyond the village remains wide and waiting. You eat together in silence, the bread warm and soft, the fig sweet and familiar. Around you, the village moves without noticing. You're no longer strangers here, but neither are you permanent. You are part of the current, passing through, leaving behind only faint traces in the dust and on the walls. As the sun climbs higher, you walk once more to the edge of the river. The boat is smaller this time, just a narrow skiff meant for shorter travel. The boy from the dock, the one who had watched you arrive, now stands ready to guide it, his arms lean and strong. He nods to you both, and you climb in without hesitation. The water catches the hull and carries it forward with a familiar tug, like the gentle pull of sleep at the end of a long day. You sit facing the shoreline, watching the village shrink again into the landscape. The wall, the square, the palm trees. They blend together into memory, becoming part of a story that will live quietly in the folds of your thoughts. You turn your face toward the wind and let your eyes drift shut for a moment. Not because you are tired, but because you are at peace. The river moves on, the world breathes, and somewhere within you a new wall begins to form, blank, open, waiting for the colour of tomorrow.